We're talking to Dan Rather this morning on CD1025. He has a new book out. It is called Rather Outspoken, My Life in the News. And surely that has been what it's been. 24 years behind the anchor desk at CBS Evening News, all those years as a correspondent before, and now over at HDNet with Dan Rather Reports. Dan, how you doing these days, man?
I'm doing great. This is a great time in my life, Joe. I get to do what I want to do, report what I want to report, how I want to report it. I think it's the best sustained work in my career, and I couldn't be happier.
Well, tell me a little bit about the stuff you guys are doing over at HDNet.
Well, we specialize in deep digging investigative reports and what we hope is high quality international reporting from Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places. But deep in our DNA is investigative journalism, trying to expose corruption, when and how it happens. For example, the widespread problem of fake, that is counterfeit prescription drugs. That's the kind of story we like to do, the kind of story we specialize in. You see a lot
of reporters. I remember when people started going to HD, when all the channels started going HD. You heard a lot of anchors say that they were kind of scared about it because HD is in. They thought it provided too much detail, but you just leap right in at age 80, right?
Well, not a problem. But when high definition television first came in, particularly high quality high definition television of the sort we do on HDNet. Some anchors were very much concerned about it because the picture is so clear, the definition is so sharp. But, those fears disappeared pretty quickly because the public gets it, that if you have a pimple on the end of your nose and you try makeup to cover it up and HDNet shows it, they take that in stride.
Now, here's my question for you, Dan. Mark Cuban, the owner of HDNet, he owns the Dallas Mavericks. I know you're a Texan. Did you hold out for season tickets before you started working over there?
No, I probably should have. But I will say this about Mark Cuban, whom I didn't know before I went to work for him on HDNet, that, at basketball games, by his own admission, he lets the little boy out. But in business, he's all business. He gave me complete, total, absolute editorial and creative control of this weekly news program. He's been better than his word. At my age and stage, forgive my language, I don't need or have to kiss up to anybody. It's liberating and wonderful. But I will say that Mark Cuban believes in quality journalism with integrity, and he sponsors it.
Let's talk a little bit about the book. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but I did start reading it over the weekend. As the title says, your life in the news, and that's where it's been for so long. And you've covered so many amazing stories over the year, tragic and otherwise. And I guess if I'm just going to pick out one, I'll ask you about it. And that would be the assassination of JFK. And my understanding, you were the first network journalist to report the death of the president. Is that right?
Yes. With CBS News reported it first, before the official announcement, that the president not only had been shot, but that he was dead. It was a hammer to the heart for me personally and, of course, for the whole nation.
Could you imagine you were saying those words?
No. I had been put in charge of our CBS coverage of the president's trip to Texas. It was supposed to be a routine political trip getting ready for the 1964 elections. I didn't really anticipate any trouble. Certainly it never entered my mind that someone would take a shot at the president, much less kill him.
The time that you've spent now away from CBS News and now over at HDNet, and my impression is that there's more independence for you there. There's more freedom, and I know you're writing columns now that are showing up on Huffington Post. Talk about that freedom that you have a little bit more now that you're not behind that anchor desk.
Well, this has been really liberating for me. And, I worked at CBS News, and proudly so, for 44 years, 24 at the anchor desk. And what I hadn't realized is how corporatized the news had come at CBS. That the corporatization, politicalization, and trivialization of the news is something we can all be concerned about, whether we're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or Mugwump. And where I am now, I have such freedom to report what I want to report, when I want to report it. It's, as I say, liberating, and I've never been happier.
We're talking to Dan Rather this morning on CD1025. I always felt like, or it seems to me anyway, that really the heyday of the network newscast was when it was Dan Rather and Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw. When you guys were going at it, that seemed to be the heyday of network news, I think.
Well, if it wasn't the heyday, it was the last high point, because we're now in the Internet era. And most people, if it isn't already true that most people get most of their news from the Internet, from the web, it soon will be true. We've moved in from the television era to the Internet era, and the period you described, roughly the period between 1980, 81, and about 2001 or 2, was in some ways the last great hurrah for network news before we moved completely into the Internet era.
I always felt like it would be great if we could see, like, if you and Tom Brokaw could get together and do something on the History Channel. Just because
I'd love to do that. Tom's a good friend of mine. We were competitors for years, but became good friends. And I'd love to do something with the History Channel. Probably not going to happen, but boy, what a joy that would be.
Well, it's just such a unique seat that you guys have all got, that very few people get to sit in, but you guys did. Basically, it's a cliche to say it, but a front row seat to history.
Well, it is a cliche to say it. It's a cliche because it's true. And how lucky I've been and blessed to live my dream of being a reporter and to see as much history and be able to write it in something like the book or still be doing programs. I know how lucky I am. I can be dumb as a brick wall about a lot of things, but at least I'm smart enough to know how lucky I've been.
I want to ask you one more thing, a current event thing here. We've got the presidential election coming up, and it looks like it's going to be Mitt Romney, obviously, versus President Obama. And the last time out, we had so many young people were so engaged in the process and came out to campaign and to vote and go to the ballot box and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that young people are going to be as energized this time, or is it? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't think they'll be as energized this time as they were the last time. For one thing, we have an incumbent president running now. In my book, President Obama, I think the election will be close. I think President Obama could win it, but right now I think he's an underdog. The question is whether the Republican Party and their nominee to be Mitt Romney, whether they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by making some mistake. But I always enjoy covering politics. I think this will be a great campaign, but I don't think that young people will turn out in the same numbers as they did the last time, and that could be a detriment to President Obama because, as you know, he got a majority of the young vote last time, and if he doesn't get it out this time, it's another reason to doubt whether he can get reelected.
These things are rarely about the challenger in this case, right? It's almost always about the incumbent, and do you just want to rehire the guy or not, right?
Well, that's true, and I think this race will be exactly that. Do you want to rehire the guy who's had the job, or do you want to put in office a guy who, a new face? Of course, what the Democrats will argue is that Mitt Romney is not really new, that what he's going to offer is, quote, warmed over George Bush, and warmed over policies of the George Bush administration, which got us into the economic situation we're in now. I think that those will be the contours of the race as it goes along.
Dan Rather's new book is called Rather Outspoken, My Life in the News, and a real honor to get to talk to you today. Dan Rather, thank you so much, man.
Joe, thank you, and Godspeed to you.